right. So with that kind of information, let's dive into the Flutter code. And a very first concept you got to understand is something called a scaffold. And to help you understand why scaffold is so important, let's actually go back to the sample code. So this is a code we created from the Flutter by default. That's the typical sample app where you have this little screen here that you click on a button, you're going to increase the little number. So we already went through the basic in the previous lessons, but from today, we're going to just focus on the UI. Now, very quick recap for the code. So if you look at this app, there's only one screen, okay? And then we talked this one before. This whole screen is controlled by this class called my homepage. And my homepage doesn't have a lot of code except specifying the title as attribute. So most of the things are specified in the class called my homepage state. And there are a lot of code here. And obviously the most important method or the function is something called build. The build method takes the input as a context and also it returns some kind of widget. There is an annotation called override. So when you look at this type of a code and method here, you should understand this is something we call as a framework code. This code is provided by Flutter. We don't have to change it and we cannot change it. Any kind of a screen, you must have this method called build and with exactly the same input and output. And there's no reason of why we have to do this because it's specified and required by the Flutter framework. So this type of code we call it as abstract code. So you don't have to worry too much about the details of why we do this. At this point, just try to follow. But then what you need to know is that inside this method, we're going to return some kind of widget, which the Flutter will take and render for the whole entire screen. And then if you look at the code here, for almost every single screen you build with Flutter by default, they're going to return you this something called a scaffold. That's why I want to introduce this concept first. Scaffold is a concept coming from Google. It comes from Google's very famous UI design guidance called material design. So if you go to here, if you go to Google material design, and that is exactly what Google had put together some kind of styles and user experiences, the color, font type, all the details they want used for the entire Google's product. So that's why if you use Google's product, whether it's Gmail, Google Photos, Google Drive, you will see the UI are always very consistent because they're all following the same style and guidance. And Scaffold is designed as part of that material design guidance which just specify for a mobile app screen what you can do to put together a very basic foundation for the screen. As you can see from the image here, this kind of a layout here with a top bar, we call it app bar, with a little middle area called body, and also with some of the button here floating, we call it a floating action button. So this kind of a UI is very commonly seen in most of the apps. And sometimes you don't have this floating button. Sometimes maybe you hide the bar, but overall, most apps follow this kind of style. So in order to make everything easier to build, Google actually built this default structure called scaffold. So that's why in Flutter code, most of the time, you're going to return the scaffold directly. I want to find out more information about a scaffold. Everything is included in the Flutter's documentation. So if you just Google Flutter scaffold, the very first one you can see here, that's the official documentation on how do you use scaffold, what is scaffold, what is the configuration you can do with it, and they even have some kind of sample code that you can try here very quick. And so this is the only place that officially determines all the coding techniques and or it's almost like a manual. So you want to read and learn how do we use a lot of these things, right? So here we're not going to go through all the details, but I just want to highlight the most important ones. Anytime a scaffold, you could specify something item like app bar, which is the top bar here. The bottom bar, you can even put the bottom bars. And there's a floating action button, that's the button we saw, and a body, that's the most important part, which contains the major content for the UI um, elements and widgets. So let's go back code here. As you can see, this is a bar and they specify the top bar right here. So I want to do a very simple experiment. If I actually delete this, okay, you can actually remove them. If I save and refresh the code, as you can see, the bar is gone. okay, because you are now using the app bar. So the scaffold gave you all these options, but you don't have to use them, right? So I could bring this back and then come back. If I want to change the title from this into something else, welcome to Flutter Dev. I save it, and then you can see the title will be updated. So everything here is controlling the app bar. And obviously, you can do a lot of other things like including the buttons, some other icons. I'm not going to show the details right here. And then the center part is the body. That's obviously the most important part. Okay, you can have a screen without app bar, but you don't want to have a screen without any body because all the UI things you see should be included in the body. So we'll come back to this one a little bit later. And then finally, you have something called a floating action button. And then that is the button that we do here. You click on here, and that's going to increase the number. And then we also show the example that you can change the icon. For example, I'm going to do this one with some other ones. I'll just do some other random buttons. I refresh, and then that's going to change a different icon. All right, so that's how you can change the floating button. And same way, you can remove this one. I'm going to delete the code here. I save it, and then that button is gone. Okay, I can then bring it back. All right. Now, scaffold can also do other things. I just want to show one more example. In a scaffold, there is something also very useful, something called a bottom navigation bar. Okay, so if you want to Google Flutter bottom navigation bar, let's actually find out some more specific example on how to use this. Okay, so this is official documentation. A lot of things going on. I'm just going to cut. Okay, this is a kind of a called uh, bottom navigation bar. Okay, I'm just gonna cut something very quick to show you how that's gonna work in the app. So we are gonna use, I'll just use one example. I'll try to pick a simple example here. Okay, so I will do maybe yeah, the first one. This is a very basic one. As you can see, this is the sample code. They have a scaffold, they have app bar, body, and then bottom navigation bar. So if I simply copy this, okay, and I go back to the code. I'll put this one under the floating action button. I do a bottom navigation bar. I do need to make some changes. This one controls which menu bar option you want to start with. I want to start it by default to 0. Okay, this control the color. And then this one has a list of menu items you want to put. Right now we have 3 menu options: home, business, school. And there's on tab. I don't need it right now, so I'm gonna, just get rid of that. Okay. So if I save the code, as you can see, there are 3 bottom navigation bar menu items. Right now, I click on that one. It doesn't do anything because we have not code the we have not code uh, the action yet. Okay, let me actually fix the let me fix this emulator. All right, so yeah, I by accident click on this one. All right, so let me bring the screen back. But yeah, so right now it's not clickable, but this is just a very basic UI just to show you the scaffold does support this. If you don't want it, just get rid of that and it's gone. Or you want to have this one, you don't want a floating action button, and that one is gone. Okay, so if you feel that your app could fit into this scaffold, and just use a scaffold because it provides you a very basic layout or base to work with. Okay, so I'm gonna just get rid of the bottom navigation bar because right now we don't need it. I'll bring this floating action button back. Okay, just come back to the original design. All right, so that's called scaffold.